Many countries in the world are thinking about central bank digital currencies at different stages of development. So ones that have issued have been like the small ones, but of course we know like European Central Bank being one of the larger ones, thinking about it currently quite seriously. And one kind of question is naturally like first like what does it mean? Like there are two types, like a retail or cash-like one which would be something used by individuals, or wholesale CBDC, which effectively can be also seen as something that doesn't concern individuals that much. It can make transactions more efficient within financial institutions. So like in this respect, project is about the retail one, about some things that individuals are using. And second, why would one want to issue a CBDC at all? And like there are like maybe like three reasons that like are generally potentially compelling. Like one can be financial inclusion, about which this paper is not, but could have been the reason for why it has been issued in some countries already. Then it could be like some efficiency gains and keeping central banks more relevant. But the approach, in this paper is rather that if one is already thinking of it, then why not try to design payment methods that have better features than what exists. So this is what this paper is about, and that's why I'm also saying that like whether it is central banks issuing it or Ethereum issuing it or a tech firm issuing it, essentially could come with the same benefits from the point of view of this model. And what these desirable features could be? Well, like first we know that privacy tends to be considered quite a big concern, especially like certainly in Eurozone, in United Kingdom, in Canada, because all the surveys by these institutions have indicated that it's number one public concern, if they are even offered all sort of other features CBDC could have. That is what individuals respond to care most about. We can think about programmable features and it allowing something more like smart contracts. And of course, central banks and regulators could worry also about the use of it for being for money laundering, tax evasion, and things like that, which is potentially a reason why they sometimes want to limit privacy. So we can talk about it later. So this paper's like approach is to take the simplest possible situation and look at how different payment systems would affect firm-consumer interactions. So there is, in the main model, there is just one firm. There are like other parties, like financiers, like government, and there are many consumers. For the illustration, I even have a simplest case, which has just one firm and one consumer with other parties and so on. So the question is here, like, if we are considering different payment systems, what aspects of privacy should be protected and what do we want? So one way, and I don't use this terminology anymore because tokens tend to be used in many contexts related to blockchains, for example, or even like AI, but like monetary economists sometimes like to separate like two extreme systems of money, being something that is like cash, like sometimes referred as token money, where only things that is being validated is a means of transaction per se. You know, when we are making a cash transaction, nobody cares like whom it belongs to and who it ends up with. So only things that like is carrying some validation is a note itself. Good for privacy, bad for many other things. And as the opposite extreme, we have like an kind of account-based system when we are needing to know who sends money to whom. So like sometimes the CBDC question comes into being, should it be more like token money or should it be more like account-based money? That's a key idea. And this paper is why not to try to get both best of the both systems. So what it has, it is what one can call like intentional asymmetry, being that we want to keep money spent or consumers maximally private while like having a limited privacy of money received. That all the model is gonna like rationalize like why this makes sense. And just like in case we don't have time, an idea of like payments that is asymmetrically private could look something like that. So you have Alice here and Bob here. So Alice and Bob both have some ID linked accounts somewhere, whoever holds them. Alice wants to buy coffee from Bob's cafe, so instead of just making a transfer, like usual, from her account to Bob's account, one can turn things into like anonymized private coins here in between, which like kind of disconnects Alice's identity from like these coins, and then it can be sent to Bob's account. So essentially what one would observe is that Bob received like funds like worth his coffee from somebody, but we don't know that it was from Alice. So in a way that if we want to benefit from the fact that having verifiable records of what Bob receives is useful, that is preserved, while like of course like somebody might make some guesses, but if you're disconnecting from Alice, it is good for Alice's privacy. And so there exist like so just a second. So there exist methods related to zero noise proofs that we use to achieve it, but like as my wonderful discussant has like also mentioned in an earlier paper, one simple way to implement something like that could be like payment cards that doesn't have your name on it. So people can see that this payment card is making payments, but we have the cards that we have split off. So this is a main idea, and where it comes from is that like if you are looking at like the two extreme systems, like pure token money or cash, or pure account-paid money, then effectively we have like the benefits of this interaction between consumer and firm being like NPV, but with some costs. And I'm going to get back to your question in a second. So in the case of like a cash-based system, we have the classical ones related to auditing costs, so that makes things inefficient. If we are using like something that is not private at all, we don't have this worry, but we have privacy costs. And so one of the key ideas in the paper is to show that with this asymmetric privacy, at least with large number of consumers, we get almost the first best end, yeah?
Does anonymized coins have offline capability?
So like all these things, like I don't need to like fully like decide, because actually that's like an interesting conversation also about how we're going to do somebody like some offline things. Again, it is like what is recorded when. So the systems that are technologically possible, as I know, like could range from keeping everything offline, which would not like implement it, but like could have like somebody a little bit like the cards that I mentioned before, or it could be a mobile device that is disconnected from your utility, but the receiver's payments from this whatever device is recorded, yeah?
I think you have less than 5 minutes.
Okay, yeah, so maybe I don't answer questions before like so on. So, okay, related literature, don't have time. So the simplest example one can imagine is with one firm, one consumer. But like maybe like from before, like the intuition is a little bit clear. When a consumer like is using a non-private digital means of payment, they suffer some privacy loss. If they use cash, they don't. But at the same time, if they use cash, then we need to solve a kind of classical mechanism design problem. So ultimately, we'll get like this to this trade-off that I was like highlighting before. So financing becomes like more expensive, and the consumer otherwise. Okay, so there is like these two situations here. That like either we are getting privacy losses or we are suffering auditing costs, but this is not yet getting into the interesting question about like why do we care about like privacy and how is it modeled. So again, like inspired by my discussions paper, but also related to the discussions in the differential privacy literature. What I mean about privacy in this case is not about like between the consumer and firms. This can be sometimes good, sometimes bad, but rather about the possibility of a third parties learning something about like the consumer characteristics from their consumption decisions. So, for example, when I see that somebody is buying healthy bread, I might conclude that they should pay a lot for insurance because they are probably ill, or I could make the opposite conclusion, being that if I see them buying not buying healthy breads, and we might like conclude that they are either healthy or they don't take care of their health. So like this is something that individuals are worried about, which can be modeled nicely via having some type-specific thieves around. So this is, so I have 2 minutes. Let me just like, summarize like one thing here, that like one can model these privacy concerns essentially as something which is A and B, nothing to do with good and bad types, because that is a different concern, very well analyzed in finance. It is just the fact that like we have some consumers that might have more propensity to buy a good than another one, and then already even so like there might be some information about how many A's and how many B's are there around. If A's tend to buy something more frequently than B's, then effectively it creates like the preferences that is making everybody to come across as a different type. And then again, if we are like using these privacy costs in the main model as well, then we reach to the similar trade-offs that I preemptively showed you at the beginning, where we have the fact that if we have symmetric privacy or cash-like payments, then we have inefficiencies due to auditing. If we have no privacy at all, then there are privacy losses. If we are forced to choose between the two, depends on like how much like auditing costs compared to the privacy losses, but we can do better and actually very close to first best if like when we use this asymmetric privacy, because we can avoid the firms like problems and like costlier investments due to auditing on one hand, and at the same time we don't reveal unnecessary information about consumers. So overall that has like also consequences on financial contracts. So here on this figure we have auditing costs like on the horizontal axis, and what can be covered on the different auditing costs on vertical ones. So clearly if it gets more expensive, then we can't raise external financing, but it is also like talking to Modigliani-Miller like results, so it's 0, but also here there are multiple financing contracts that are possible. And second, is a model I don't only consider external financing, but simultaneously also taxation. And again, like what is trade-offs, that if you have like some like, I know I'm out of time, some tax rate in frictionless market, both extreme cases would like imply higher taxes and potentially some non-desirable distribution effects, while asymmetric privacy would do better. So I'll stop it here. Hopefully not too much over time. Thank you.
Let's see, do I get the mic?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Goes here. And does this work? No, not yet.
No.
Okay. This paper gives a really good idea. The policy designs that have been done right now for CBDC have concentrated on, if you want to talk about variable privacy, if you want some things to be more private than others, they focused on big accounts versus small accounts. if you got a little account and you're a tourist coming into the city, into the country, you're going to get an account which doesn't have a lot of money allowed into it, and we'll keep it private. But if you're a regular in the country, then you're going to get a bigger account. You're going to lose your privacy. Or do it off of, instead of the size of the amount that's allowed into your wallet, do it off of the size of the transaction. Transactions of this size, private; transactions that are bigger are public. This paper says, okay, no, the alternative is, let's focus on the privacy within the transaction itself. In particular, let's allow for differences between the privacy of the buyer and the privacy of the seller. And that could be a useful and important thing to think about. Question: who's going to get the information? What do we mean by the privacy? Because there are going to be various levels of that. It could be that we just want to be private from I'm the buyer, I just want the seller to know about me. It could be that I don't want the world at large to know about me. That's the open banking kind of stuff. Or it could be that I simply don't want the payment system itself, usually the government, to know about me as well. And this paper talks about all those, folds all of those into the discussion that's going on here. The modeling is kept clean and simple, and so it makes the points that it makes extremely clear. But it's also very careful. In the end of the paper, all the details are about the complications are legitimately put out there. But for readers like me who want to know where you're going to get to, that's kept separately so that I can understand the paper first before I go back and look at the details. What I want to do is review the model, and then note a couple of the assumptions that make it a clever presentation. And then finally, I want to be realistic about something and come back and ask about feasibility, not from the computer science side, but from the operational side. In particular, how much government credibility do you need for something like this to actually work? Okay, the model itself, as the author points out, is putting two literatures together. On the one side, there's the literature that's coming out of limited enforcement, costly state verification, and they use the Sanchez and Sobol model as the cleanest place for that. And it's a literature that talks about the fact that privacy is bad because privacy allows for producers to hide their profits. And when they hide their profits, that's bad. The financing doesn't work as well as it would otherwise, and the tax authorities don't know what's going on. So you'd like to undo that privacy to get that stuff right. Other side, there's literature about what the virtues of privacy are, and they go back and use the paper that I wrote with Jamie McAndrews and Will Roberts. Privacy is good because it protects consumers from rapacious third parties. And so the art of the paper is to say, okay, here's a version of the privacy is bad model, and here's a version of the privacy that's good model, and we can put them together in a very, very clean way. Think about it this way. The paper starts by saying, well, suppose there weren't any privacy concerns at all. Firm's going to raise money to finance some production. It's also going to be subject to some tax obligations. And the financial structure that's involved, that evolves to make that the most efficient way of doing things under costly state verification is going to be one in which there's auditing of what the firm claims. If the firm claims it's in trouble, we're going to check and make sure that the firm's in trouble. But if the firm's doing well enough to say we're not in trouble, then that's fine. We believe you. We're going to charge you, the firm's going to get charged most if they say they're not in trouble. If they want a discount from their obligations, we're going to go verify it, and that's an expensive thing to do. And the paper shows that this is standard. As long as the auditing costs are sufficiently high, you're going to get a contract that looks sort of debt-like out of that. I put the asterisks there because she's very careful about showing under what circumstances that's actually true. It's not quite true for universal possibilities of contracts, but for a limited, reasonable set of contracts to look at, you get something that looks like debt. That's good, that's the best way of doing things, but it's still going to have some expenses. Those expenses are involved in the cost of the auditing you have to do in the bad states of the world, and the incentives that are put in there are needed to get truthful reporting, so you do pay off your debts if you're not in trouble. So that's the standard world without privacy concerns. So when you have arrangements that have no privacy in them at all, that's great from the incentives problem for the firm. There's no need to do truthful reporting. We know exactly what you're doing right now, and so we can extract whatever we're supposed to extract from you. But if that purchase reveals something publicly which the consumer prefers not to have revealed, then the consumer is going to say, that purchase isn't worth as much as I thought it was going to be worth. Okay, great. And so goods not going to sell for its full price. Notice, the information doesn't actually have to benefit the seller. The seller doesn't have to care about the information. The fact that the information is being revealed is something that the consumer just simply doesn't like that and doesn't value the goods as much. They actually improve on our version of that, this paper does. It makes it, the problem is, in the world that we had in mind, the purchasing was, if you buy this thing, we know that you bought it. You bought this expensive jewelry, someone's going to steal it from you, so you don't want to have anybody know that you bought the jewelry. In this paper, it's a symmetric thing. It's not just that if you do something or don't do something, it's going to find out something about you, some information there, and there are guys out there that would like that information one way or the other. And that actually makes it much more tractable for doing the rest of the modeling. That's pretty cool. Trade-off. Consumer prefers privacy. Auditing is costly to do. An asymmetric arrangement reduces both sets of costs. With finite populations, it doesn't eliminate the cost because, after all, I can still learn something about you from the fact that the action you're taking is going to change the total population. And that's going to be useful for people outside to find out about general interest is the typical individual out there interested in this or interested in that? And I may not want that to be known by anybody. And so for small populations, there's still going to be some, but as the numbers of people grow, that's going to go away. Paper talks very carefully about what mixed strategies do. That's good. The paper talks about taxes versus financing. I would like to have had more clarity about what the difference is between those, because they actually matter. They're symmetric in this world. They both have the same effect. But for practical purposes, it actually matters a lot which one we're talking about. Here the firms are perfect price discriminators. That's done to make life simple and make the point very clean. And the firms are cleverly indifferent to the customer's privacy concerns. So we don't have the complications of what would happen in a world where I am a firm, I want to learn something about you. I want to learn that to exploit as a firm about you. That gets complicated because there are good things and bad things about learning about the other individual. In this world, I don't, as a firm, I just don't care. It's the third parties that are going to grab the information. That makes it very clean to make the point. Okay. Heresy. Is privacy actually important? I mean, I want to believe that it is. I work on this stuff, but it has to be asked. In this world, it's third-party privacy that matters. That once you've done this action, other people are going to be out there exploiting it. Statistical third-party privacy, I'm not so sure that's important enough to worry about in this context. Why? Because I don't need this kind of arrangements to find out. If I want to find out statistical information about preferences of consumers, the payment stuff doesn't matter. I go out and do a little survey. I find the same information without using the payment structure at all. Okay? So it's got to be more about about the learning about you, not just learning about people in general, for this story to care. I have to admit, though, I have to ask the question: do people actually care about privacy? Okay, and the disconnect between people's statements about what they care about and what they actually care about is pretty great in the examples of privacy. People insist that privacy matters, and then they act in such a way as to say it doesn't matter. So you have to be careful about, there's an important caveat at that point in the story. Feasibility. Do we trust the government? Anti-money laundering and tax evasion make this issue primarily of interest to governments. It's not such an issue for financing. If it were financing that we were worried about, the firm would be perfectly willing to make deals to give the financiers the information that they want. If it's an involuntary story, it's a story about governments wanting to get that information. If governments want to get that information, then we have to worry about what is the interest of governments in preserving privacy on the other side. Could be that they are benevolent and consumers really desire privacy and they're giving it to it. But we have plenty of examples where governments will legitimately want to make some transactions not private. Dual-use transactions. Transactions where you are buying explosives. There may be legitimate reasons to buy explosives, but we may want to know about the people that are doing it. Or so it's not just the shame of buying tobacco or liquor. It might be the dangers of buying something that's, for some people, buying it is not a good idea. For example, crystal meth is a big problem. Because crystal meth is a big problem, you can't buy Sudafed in quantities. If you buy too much Sudafed, either you have an elephant with a cold, or you're trying to do something interesting with it that people don't want you to do. Once you have that admission, can you maintain the boundary? That's the real question. If at that point, you've got to have the government say, okay, this is no good to buy privately, this is good to buy privately, suddenly becomes the question of, does the government say that buying these incendiary literature is also something we want to monitor as well? Can we maintain the boundary? Can we maintain the boundary where the privacy arises? Great idea. Excellent model, well presented. Implementation raises questions, but that's great because those questions will keep us busy as well. Thanks.